"You always said you weren't picky," he said, then placed a plastic plate on the floor for me. For a moment, the room froze. My daughter looked away. My son-in-law smiled. And the man I used to be, the one who begged for peace, died right there beside that plate. That night, I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I just walked out into the cold, and by morning, I decided to take back everything they thought was theirs. The driveway was full when I arrived. 3 unfamiliar cars parked at careless angles across the gravel, as if whoever owned them didn't plan to stay long. Their headlights had just gone out, leaving faint trails of warmth on the hoods. I checked my watch. 5:00 p.m. Sharp. Thanksgiving dinner. My daughter's invitation said 5 o'clock. Not a minute before, not a minute after. I built this house with my own hands 30 years ago. But tonight, as I walked toward the door, it didn't feel like home anymore. When I knocked, laughter floated from inside clinking glasses, muffled voices, the faint echo of music. No answer. I knocked again. The door opened. Leonard filled the frame, 6'2", neatly trimmed beard cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my truck payment. His eyes were already tired of me. "You're late," he said. "I'm right on time," I replied. He looked over his shoulder, then back at me, calculating whether letting me in was worth the trouble. Finally, he stepped aside, not welcoming, just moving out of the way. I stepped into the house and froze. The dining table, my table, was surrounded by strangers. Young professionals in fitted shirts and soft laughter. Wine glasses raised, conversations flowing. All of them Leonard's friends, not mine, not even hers. Henrietta appeared from the kitchen carrying a bowl of mashed potatoes, 35 years old. Still graceful, still beautiful. The image of her mother, my late wife Sarah. She saw me and stopped. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," I said gently. "Hi, Dad?" Her voice was a whisper. Leonard moved past me, shoulder brushing mine. "We're just about to eat." "You showed up at an awkward time." "The invitation said 5, I said again. He ignored that, scanning the table like a host checking his seating plan. "Looks like we're full," he said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Every seat was taken. Every plate perfectly set. Even the turkey looked like it had been carved for someone else. "Where should I sit?" I asked, my voice calm but heavy. Leonard raised an eyebrow, pretending to think. "That's a good question." A nervous laugh rippled around the table. "A woman in a red sweater said softly, 'Maybe we can squeeze in another chair.'" Leonard lifted a hand. "No need. I've got the perfect spot." He disappeared into the kitchen. Henrietta stood frozen. Our eyes met just for a moment, and I saw it shame. Not surprise, not confusion, shame. When Leonard came back, he was holding a flimsy white plate, plastic, disposable, the kind you'd use for a child's picnic. He walked past the table, past his guests, and placed it on the floor near the front door. Then, with the precision of someone performing a trick, He scraped leftovers onto it. Dry turkey, cold gravy, stuffing hardened at the edges. He set the spoon down, stood up, and smiled. Right here works for you. The air left the room. I stared at the plate. The kind you'd feed a dog with. What are you doing? I asked. Giving you exactly what you deserve, he said. You always said you weren't picky. Someone at the table let out an awkward laugh, short, nervous. I looked at my daughter. She didn't speak. Her knuckles whitened around the bowl she still held. Her eyes never left the floor. She knew. She had known this was coming and said nothing. That silence cut deeper than anything Leonard could have done. I looked at that plate again. That cheap hollow thing sitting on the hardwood I'd installed myself. And in it I saw everything I'd allowed, the years of quiet giving, of sure, take your time, of swallowing disrespect, because I thought that was what good fathers did. Old meat would have laughed it off. Maybe taken the plate, stepped outside, eaten cold turkey. In the truck, told himself it wasn't worth the fight. But that man, the man who kept choosing peace over dignity, died the moment Leonard smiled. I turned toward the door. No shouting, no begging, no tears, just footsteps, steady, deliberate. The air outside was cold enough to bite. The porch light flickered. Behind me, laughter resumed, easy, relieved laughter. Through the dining room window, I could see them, the strangers, eating my food on my table in the house I paid for. Leonard leaned back in his chair at the head of it all, glass raised high. Henrietta's face was blank. I stood there for a long time, keys in my hand, the same keys that still fit every lock in that house. They thought silence meant defeat, but silence is where judgment begins. And that night I decided if they wanted to treat me like a ghost, then I'd show them what a ghost can take. I didn't remember the drive home. One moment I was pulling out of their driveway. The next I was standing in my kitchen, still holding my truck keys. The jacket was still on. My shoes, too. I hadn't even turned the lights on. Just stood there, staring at the wall, or maybe through it. On the counter sat a grocery bag, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. The meal for one I had picked up earlier that afternoon. I had forgotten all about it. I'd spent the day imagining laughter stories, family warmth. Instead, I came home to silence and fluorescent light. I left the bag untouched. Instead, I walked to the small table by the window and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen filled the room, cold blue, merciless. For years I'd lived with my emotions pressed down beneath the surface. But tonight, emotion had burned away, leaving something sharper. Clarity. I opened my bank app first, scrolling through years of transactions. Each line was a memory. $1 and $200 credit card payment, $800 car repair, $3, $400 emergency dental bill for their kid. Then the big one, $80,000, Leonard's startup investment, a tech dream that never existed. Beyond a pitch deck, I scrolled through the back rent, mortgage payments, 4 years of property tax. They've been lived in that house rent-free for nearly half a decade. I did the math. $1,100 a month. In fair, $72,000 a house. Altogether $175,000. That's what my kindness had cost. I opened the filing cabinet, next the one my wife Sarah had labeled years ago when she was still alive. Her handwriting on every tab. Insurance, deed, there's promissory note. I found it Leonard Business Investment. Inside a notarized promissory note, clear as daylight. His signature. My signature. A promise to repay within 4 years. Dated 3 years ago. I set it beside the property deed, title in my name only. Sarah and I had bought it as a rental 20 years back, planning to use it for retirement income. But when she died and Henrietta said she needed family clothes, I let them move in, just until they get back on their feet. 4 years later, they were standing on mine. I sat down and whispered into the stillness. After Sarah died, I just wanted her close. Hearing my own voice made it real and ridiculous. I hadn't been helping them. I'd been buying proximity, paying for the illusion of family. My phone buzzed on the table. Henrietta. I watched it ring, vibrating against the wood. 5 times, then 6, then silence. A voicemail appeared. I pressed play on speaker. Dad, please, can we talk tomorrow? Please call me back. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Dishes clattered in the background. Leonard's laugh floated faintly behind her. She had her chance to talk. At dinner. When it mattered. I turned the phone face down. Then I typed into the browser, Texas eviction law, no lease. The page loaded slowly, as if testing my resolve. Landlord may issue a 30-day notice to vacate for tenants at will. If tenant refuses legal eviction, may follow without a signed lease. I kept reading. Every sentence was a step towards something I should have done years ago. Then I searched another phrase, promissory note enforcement, Texas law. Statute of limitations, 4 years for written contracts. His note was 3, well within the window. I wrote everything down on a yellow legal pad. Property deed, sole owner, promissory note, valid signed. Dated, rent-free duration, 4 years. Evidence of payment, tax, insurance, utilities, all mine. My handwriting was steady, deliberate. Each stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost trying to stay the nice guy. At 6:15 a.m., the first light crept through the blinds. I hadn't slept. I wasn't tired. I showered, shaved, dressed in pressed khakis and a clean shirt. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone different. Older, yes, but the eyes were harder now, focused. I brewed coffee and drank it standing at the counter. The bitterness grounded me. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Marcus Wade, attorney. He'd handled the contracts for my construction business back when I still built homes with my own hands. A good man, direct, no drama. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice still thick with sleep. "Tin, you okay?" "I need an emergency meeting. This morning, he paused. It's the day after Thanksgiving. I know what day it is. Something in my voice made him stop questioning. All right, 9 a.m., my office. By 9 sharp, I was sitting across from him, papers spread across the desk, like an autopsy of trust. Marcus leaned forward, reading through everything, the deed, the note, the bank statements, the printed transactions. I need to evict them, I said simply. He looked up slowly. That's a serious step, John. No. What Leonard did last night was serious. I just didn't react. He nodded once, the professional side taking over. Do they have a lease? No. Ever paid rent? Not a cent. Utilities? All under my name. He sat. Becca exhaled. All right, we'll start with a 30-day notice to vacate, certified mail. You'll also want to send a demand letter for the $80,000 loan repayment. We'll keep everything documented. Paper trail tight. I nodded. Every dollar, every date. He studied me for a moment. John, are you sure you want to go down this road? She's your daughter. I met his eyes. Yesterday I went to Thanksgiving dinner at my own house. Leonard put food on the floor for me. She watched and said nothing. Marcus didn't speak for a long time. Then he simply said, I'll draft the notice today. When I left his office, the cold morning light hit me square in the face. For the first time in years, I felt awake. My phone buzzed again. 5 missed calls from Henrietta. 3 voicemails. I opened a text message instead, typed carefully. You'll receive legal documents by Monday. Do not contact me until you've read them. I stared at the words for a long time before pressing send. That was the moment I realized I wasn't losing family. I was ending a transaction. And for the first time in a long time, I'd stopped paying for love. Monday came gray and quiet. I was at my desk by 7, a mug of coffee cooling beside a pile of invoices. I wasn't reading. My phone sat face down, but I kept checking the tracking app. Marcus had mailed the certified letters Friday afternoon, 1 to my daughter, 1 to her husband. The first was a 30-day notice to vacate. The second, a demand for repayment of the $80,000 loan. Every document stamped, signed and legally airtight. At 9:47 a.m., the screen lit, delivered, signature obtained. Leonard's scrawl filled the box. 15 minutes later, the phone rang. His name on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Is this some kind of joke? His voice was half laugh, half threat. It's a legal notice, not a joke. You're really gonna kick out your own daughter over a dinner. I'm reclaiming my property. You can't do this. We have rights. No. You have 30 days. Read the notice carefully. He hung up. The line went dead, but the silence left behind felt clean. I set the phone down, turned back to my work, and realized I was breathing evenly for the first time in weeks. 2 hours later, the phone buzzed again, Henrietta. I almost didn't pick up. But something inside me still answered when I heard my daughter's name. Dad, please, don't do this. You watched him put food on the floor for me, I said quietly. You said nothing. I didn't know what to do. Leonard gets angry when then you have A bigger problem than where you'll live next month. You're punishing me for his behavior. I'm ending an arrangement that stopped working. We can't afford a new place. Leonard's business. He should have thought about that before humiliating me in front of strangers. Her breath caught. You're destroying us. No. I'm just no longer funding you. I'm your daughter. Yes. And you chose your husband over your father. Now you live with that choice. I ended the call. This time, the power shifted. The guilt that used to choke me had turned to calm resolve. By mid-afternoon, Marcus called. Leonard's lawyer reached out Simmons' discount practice handles, traffic tickets and divorces. Asked for 60 days instead of 30. And I told him the law requires 30. He tried to play the family obligation card. I shut it down. This is property law, not therapy. I smiled. Good. That evening, I scrolled through Leonard's social media page. Photos of expensive dinners 2 weeks ago. A new watch glinting under restaurant light, a Colorado vacation last month. Couldn't pay rent, but could pose for mountains. Every picture was proof of his arrogance. At 8:30, my phone rang again. Leonard's voice had changed, now smooth, almost polite. Alton, let's be reasonable. I said things I shouldn't have. It was stupid. Accept it, I said. You still have 29 days to vacate. What about the money I can't pay 80 grand? Then I'll see you in court. He hesitated, the charm slipping. You'd really sue your own daughter. The note has your signature, not hers. But you're married. Joint assets. Figure it out. Silence. Then low and cold. You'll regret this, old man. You've said that before, I replied and hung up. Afterward, I gathered every record. Marcus had requested utility bills, property tax, receipts, insurance documents. Every paper had my name. Every payment came from my account. Facts were cleaner than emotion. They didn't flinch when someone shout. I paused over an old photo on the shelf. Henrietta at her college graduation, Sarah beside her. Both of them radiant. I remembered the click of the camera, the pride swelling in my chest. I wondered when that image had stopped being true. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus. Check this. Leonard's gone public. I opened the link. A new post. Leonard's words dripping with victimhood. My father-in-law is evicting his daughter into homelessness this Christmas. Elderly man abandoning family. Daughter terrified. Nowhere to go. He'd even attached photos. Henrietta looking distressed, the house's front porch framed like it was theirs. Every sentence was grafted for sympathy. Every omission designed to make me the villain. Within an hour, the post had dozens of comments. That's terrible. How could a father do that? Sue him. 3 people I knew personally had already shared it. I called Marcus. How bad? For public image, bad. For the case, irrelevant. Don't respond. Don't engage. He wants a fight, he can screenshot. So I just let him lie about me. Yes. Let the court speak for you. Stay silent. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Anger tried to rise, but exhaustion pressed it down. They'd taken my kindness for weakness, my silence for surrender. But they'd forgotten what silence can become when it's backed by evidence. I closed my eyes and pictured that plastic plate again, the same one he'd placed on the floor, like I was less than human. Now I thought, let's see how he tastes his own medicine. The first snow of December came early that year, thin, nervous flakes that vanished the moment they touched the ground. I was at the kitchen table, sorting paperwork into 2 piles, one for Marcus, one for court. Outside, the wind rattled the branches like bones. By now, Leonard's post had gathered hundreds of reactions. Sympathy poured in from strangers who believed every word. Cruel old man, heartless father. How could he throw them out at Christmas? I didn't respond. Marcus's voice echoed in my head. Let him talk. The truth doesn't shout. That afternoon, an email arrived from a name I hadn't seen in years. Deborah Sloan. She used to handle accounts for my old construction company, Evans & Sons Building. Subject line. Thought you'd want to see this. Inside was a link to a client report and 2 attachments. Deborah's message was short. I was reviewing old invoices from a project Leonard supposedly managed. You might want to check these numbers. Something doesn't add up. I opened the first attachment, a spreadsheet of transactions for a remodeling job from last spring. $26,000 paid to a subcontractor listed as Wade Renovation Company. I frowned. Marcus's surname. But Marcus wasn't a contractor. He was a lawyer. The second attachment was the wire transfer record. The account number didn't belong to any business. It was Leonard's. My pulse slowed, not quickened. That's how I knew I was past anger. What Deborah had just sent wasn't gossip. It was evidence. I called her, Deborah. Are you saying he laundered the money? I'm saying he created fake invoices in your company's name. Clients wired the payment. He redirected it. I think he's been using your reputation for credibility. How many jobs? 3 that I can confirm. Possibly more. I thanked her, printed every document, and slid them into a new folder labeled Fraud Leonard Wade. The next morning, Marcus's eyebrows rose when he saw the folder. This changes everything he said, flipping through the pages. You're not just a landlord anymore, John. You're a victim of business identity theft. And your son-in-law's committed felony fraud. He looked up. You ready for this to go public? I nodded. He already made it public. Let's make it accurate. Marcus contacted the district attorney's office. The woman in charge, a sharp-voiced investigator named Kendra Shaw, listened quietly as he laid out the timeline. When he finished, she said, if the signatures match, this is open and shut. We'll pull his bank records. By Friday, the house across town was quiet. No social media posts, no phone calls, just silence. The kind that means someone knows the ground beneath them is shifting. That weekend, Henrietta came to see me. She stood on the porch for a full minute before knocking. Her eyes were red, not from anger, but exhaustion. Dad, please, I don't know what's happening. I opened the door wider. Then maybe you should start by asking him. She stepped inside. He said, "You're framing him." I have his invoices, his bank transfers, his forged signatures. Her face crumpled. I told him to stop months ago. I thought it was just one client. He said it would fix our debts. Silence hung between us. Outside, the snow had thickened into a pale mist. "Henrietta, I said softly, when a person chooses lies to survive, every truth becomes a threat." She covered her face. "He said you'd never forgive me." "I already did. The moment I stopped needing you to choose me." For a long time she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "What happens now?" Now I said he learns that silence isn't weakness. It's the sound justice makes before it speaks. 2 days later, officers served the warrant. Leonard was taken from the same driveway where I'd once been humiliated. Cameras caught flashes of blue and red against the windows. When the news broke, people went back to that post of his and started deleting comments. The sympathy turned into distance. The crowd that once defended him had found a new villain. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I just went back to the same table, poured myself coffee, and stared at the steam rising. The house felt different, lighter. Henrietta moved into a small apartment downtown. She sent me a short text that night. "Thank you for not shouting." I typed back, "Love doesn't require self-destruction." And as the snow kept falling outside, I realized something simple, something clean. All those years I'd thought forgiveness was letting people walk over me. But forgiveness is walking away without carrying them anymore. The courthouse smelled of dust and coffee, the kind of air that's been holding its breath for years. I'd been in buildings like this before, back when my company still existed, back when I was the man people came to for contracts, not confessions. But that morning, walking through the metal detector, I felt something different. Not fear, not victory, just completion, the quiet weight that comes when a wound finally closes. Marcus walked beside me, carrying the thick brown folder that had become our shield. Inside it, bank records, invoices, signatures, every lie Leonard had signed in ink. "Stay calm," Johnny said as we took our seats. "I've been calm since the night he put that plate on the floor," I replied. When Leonard entered, the air shifted. He wasn't the swaggering man from Thanksgiving. His hair was slicked back too neatly, his smile rehearsed. He wore a navy suit, the kind you rent for apologies. Henrietta followed a few steps behind, head down, pale from sleepless nights. The prosecutor, a young woman named Shaw, laid everything out cleanly. 3 counts of fraud, 1 of identity theft, 1 of falsified business documentation. Every word felt like a hammer striking marble. Leonard's lawyer, a thin man named Simmons, tried to paint me as a bitter father. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a family dispute. My client's father-in-law is using the courts to settle emotional grievances. There was no intent to defraud, just mistakes between family. Shaw stood and held up a paper, then explained this forged signature on a bank transfer for $26,000 to Mr. Wade's personal account. The screen flickered to life, blown-up images of checks, signatures, and wire receipts. Each one bore my name, twisted slightly, the loop of the J just wrong enough to betray him. The courtroom murmured. Leonard's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge denied it. Marcus leaned over to me. He's done. I know, I said. But she isn't. I nodded toward Henrietta. She was shaking hands clasped together. When the judge called a short break, Henrietta approached me in the hallway. Her voice was brittle, almost childlike. Dad, I didn't know it was this bad. Yes, you did, I said softly. You just didn't want to. Her eyes filled. I thought love meant standing beside him. Love doesn't mean standing beside wrong, I said. It means standing beside truth. She looked at the floor. He says you set him up. Then he's still lying, just to a smaller audience. A bailiff announced court back in session. She hesitated, then whispered, I'll testify. When she took the stand, Leonard's face tightened like glass under heat. Her voice shook at first, but steadied as she went on. She told the court how he'd used my company's name, how she'd seen the fake invoices, how she'd begged him to stop. Every word chipped away at the mask he'd worn for years. When it was over, Shaw thanked her. The judge nodded, expression unreadable. Then Leonard took the stand in his own defense, and the performance began. He spoke about his love for me, about miscommunication, about family loyalty. He painted himself as the misunderstood husband, the one who only wanted approval. But Shaw's cross-examination sliced through the act. You said you respected Mr. Miller, she asked. Of course. Then why did you transfer funds into an account under his company's name? But your control? I thought he'd agreed. Show me one document with his consent. Well, it was verbal. She held up the contract. His wife was deceased by then. Correct? Yes. So there were no other witnesses? No. Then all we have is your word. Leonard's voice cracked. I'm telling the truth. Shaw let the silence hang, then said quietly, You forged his name to fund your lifestyle. The courtroom went still. And for the first time, Leonard couldn't meet anyone's eyes. When the verdict came, it was swift guilty on all counts. Sentence pending review. Immediate remand. He turned once as they led him away, eyes searching for Henrietta. She didn't move. Marcus exhaled beside me. It's done. No, I said. It's just quieter. Outside the courthouse, the wind had shifted warm. Reporters gathered near the steps shouting questions. Mr. Miller, any comment on the verdict? Do you forgive your son-in-law? I stopped, looked straight into the cameras. My comment is this: forgiveness doesn't cancel justice. It just ends the need for revenge. Then I walked down the steps, leaving their microphones behind. That night, Henrietta came to my house again. She didn't knock this time, just stood in the doorway, her voice trembling. "He's gone, Dad. I know. I don't know what to do." "You start over," I said. "You learn the difference between love and dependence." She sat at the table where Sarah used to sit, eyes glistening in the lamplight. "Do you think Mom would forgive me?" I looked out the window where snow had begun to fall again. She already did. The hard part is forgiving yourself. For a long time, we didn't speak. The only sound was the clock ticking, patient, merciless, steady. When she finally left, she hugged me for the first time in years. It wasn't an apology. It was acknowledgement. And as the door closed behind her, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long while: peace. Not the fragile peace of avoidance, but the earned kind, the kind that comes only after truth has burned everything false away. I turned off the light, whispered into the quiet. The plates off the floor. The courthouse had been quiet for weeks. The noise moved online, then faded. People forgot the way they always do once there's a new scandal to feed on. But justice doesn't echo. It settles. It doesn't shout when it wins. It exhales. Leonard began serving his sentence 3 towns away. 5 years reduced from 7 for cooperation. I never visited. I didn't hate him. I didn't care enough to. Hate is a chain. I'd already broken mine. Henrietta moved into a small apartment above a florist downtown. It wasn't much: a single window facing the street, a second-hand couch, a little desk where she wrote apology letters she never sent. Every Sunday she had stopped by my house. She didn't speak much, just made coffee, helped with the yard, sometimes read in silence. That was her way of rebuilding, not through words, but through presence. People in town looked at me differently now. Some with pity, some with quiet respect. A few came by asking how I stayed calm through all that. I'd smile and say, "Calm isn't free. It costs everything you used to be." One morning, Marcus stopped by with paperwork. "The house is back and your name clean," he said, tapping the folder. "Taxes caught up, no liens. You could sell it if you wanted." I looked toward the window where sunlight cut through dust bunds. "No, it's not about the house. It's about what I let happen in it." He nodded. "Then what'll you do with it?" "I'll let it breathe. Maybe someday she'll come back or ready to fill it with something better." He paused, then asked, "Do you regret any of it?" "No," I said. "Regret belongs to people who still want things to go back. I don't. I want forward." That evening, I drove out to the edge of town, the same stretch of road where Sarah and I used to take Sunday drives. I parked near the overlook. The valley below was painted gold by the setting sun. I rolled down the window and let the cold air in sharp cleansing. A text came through. "Dad, can we have dinner tomorrow, Henrietta?" I typed back, "Of course." Then I sat there, phone face down, listening to the wind in the grass. For a long time, I thought about the word justice. People imagine it's something loud, a verdict, a punishment, a door closing, but it isn't. Justice is balance restored, not revenge delivered. It's the quiet, after a long storm, when everything heavy finally finds the ground. The next day she came over with groceries, cooked pasta, the way her mother used to. Too much salt, not enough sauce. We ate anyway. Halfway through it, she said, "I want to pay you back for everything." "You already are," I said. "By learning what not to repeat." She smiled. Just a flicker. "Do you ever miss Mom?" "Every day," I said. "But missing her isn't pain anymore. It's proof she mattered." Later, after she left, I found an envelope on the counter. Inside was a note, in her handwriting. "I found the strength you always said was there. It just took me longer to see it." I folded it, placed it beside Sarah's photograph, and realized the circle had closed. That night I slept without dreaming. When I woke, sunlight had filled the room. No ghosts, no anger, just quiet. I made coffee, stepped out onto the porch, and looked across the street at the trees shaking off frost. Life had gone on indifferent, but beautiful. Leonard had taken years of my peace, but only because I'd handed it to him. The day I took it back wasn't the day the judge said guilty. It was the day I stopped needing his apology. I walked down to the mailbox. Inside an envelope from the Department of Corrections. His handwriting was unmistakable. I stood there, a long moment later, unopened. Then I walked to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and slid it under the stack of unpaid bills. Some truths didn't need to be read, only buried. As the kettle whistled, I whispered to the empty house, "Peace isn't found when they're sorry. It's found when you stop asking them to be." The sound of the wind through the trees felt almost like an answer. It sat there for 3 days. The envelope with Leonard's name on it, plain white, no return address, no decoration, just a thin molded weight that somehow made the air around it heavier. I tried to ignore it. I cleaned the house, replaced a light bulb, fixed the hinge on the back door. Every time I passed the counter, my eyes caught that envelope. It was like it had gravity. Not the kind that pulled you down, the kind that pulled you back. On the 4th morning, I gave up pretending. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and slid my pocket knife along the edge of the paper. The blade hissed quietly, like a breath I didn't want to take. Inside 3 pages. His handwriting, neat, deliberate, same slant I'd seen on every check he forged. I hesitated, then began to read. "John, I don't expect you to answer. I don't even expect you to read this. I just need to write it. I messed up. I know you know that, but I'm not writing to say sorry. I'm writing to say I finally understand what you meant that night. I paused. My hand tightened on the paper. That night. Thanksgiving. The plate. The humiliation that had started everything. You didn't shout. You didn't fight. You just left. I thought that meant I'd won. But I've been in this cell for 7 months in silence, is all I hear now. And I finally realized you weren't being weak. You were letting me destroy myself. That was your revenge. You let my actions speak louder than your anger. I exhaled slowly. The words were sharper than I expected, not because of their honesty, but because they almost sounded like mine. Henrietta visits sometimes. She says you're doing fine. Says you don't talk about me. I guess that's fair. You shouldn't. I've been trying to figure out when everything went wrong. I think it was when I started mistaking what you gave me for what I was owed. I told myself I was smarter than you, that you were old, slow, replaceable. I used your name, your trust, your family. I took everything that wasn't nailed down and then laughed about it. But when they closed that cell door, I remembered your face at the table. Calm, steady. And for the first time in my life, I felt small. The paper blurred for a moment. I blinked, refocused. I can't ask you to forgive me, but I need you to know you were right. Justice doesn't need noise. It just needs truth. And truth finally caught up to me. If you ever see Henrietta, tell her I'm sorry. I turned her love into fear. I know she still blames herself. Tell her she can stop now. I set the letter down. My coffee had gone cold. The steam had long since vanished. For a long time, I just stared out the window. The trees outside were bare now, branches dark against a pale sky. Winter had stripped everything down to its bones, honest, empty, simple. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer with Sarah's old photo, not to honor him, not to forget him, just to keep proof that even the cruel can learn what silence means. That night, Henrietta called. Did you get a letter? She asked. I did. Did you read it? Yes. She hesitated. What did he say? That he finally heard the silence. She didn't reply for a while. Then she whispered, I don't know if I can forgive him. You don't have to, I said. You just have to stop letting him live in your head. Is that what you did? I thought for a moment. I'm still learning. After we hung up, I stepped outside. The night was cold, the kind that clears your thoughts whether you want it to or not. The sky was cloudless. The stars were sharp. I stood there, letter still folded in my pocket, and felt something shift, not forgiveness, but release. Forgiveness is too clean a word for what comes after betrayal. What I felt was different. It was distance without bitterness. The next morning, I burned the letter, not out of hatred, but ceremony. The flame licked the edges, slowly turning paper into curls of black smoke. The smell was faint ink and ash gilt, evaporating into air. When it was gone, I didn't feel lighter, just steady. I poured myself a new cup of coffee, opened the window, and let the winter wind fill the house. Some men learn by losing everything, I murmured to no one. And some men learn by letting go before it's too late. The smoke drifted out into the gray morning, carrying his words where they belonged, somewhere far away from me. Henrietta came to the house early that morning. The sky was pale gray, the kind of quiet color that warned of rain. She stood on the porch holding a small folded letter, her hands shaking just enough for me to notice. "I'm going to see him," she said. I looked at her for a long moment. "You're sure?" She nodded. "I need to. I can't move on until I look him in the eye." "Then don't go there looking for an apology," I said softly. "Go there looking for closure." She hesitated. "Will you come with me?" I picked up my coat. "I'll drive." The prison sat an hour north, past empty fields and broken fences. The wind carried the smell of wet dirt and rust. Neither of us spoke. There wasn't anything left to explain. At the gate, a guard checked our IDs and led us to a narrow visitation room divided by glass. Phones hung on each side. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired insects. Henrietta sat down and clutched the receiver. I stayed back near the wall, silent. Then the door opened and Leonard walked in. He looked smaller. Not just thinner, reduced. His hair had grayed at the edges, and his shoulders slumped forward, like the years had finally caught up. He sat down, picked up the phone, and looked at her. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Henrietta said, "Why did you do it?" He swallowed. "Because I thought I could get away with it. Because I thought I was smarter than everyone." Her voice cracked. "You used Dad's name, his company, his kindness. You destroyed everything." "I know." "You humiliated him. And I let you." He pressed his hand to the glass. "You don't need to hate yourself." She didn't mirror him. Her voice steadied. "You always said you loved me. But love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't humiliate the people who gave you a home." He nodded, eyes shining with exhaustion. "You're right. I didn't love anyone but myself." Tears ran down her face, but she didn't wipe them. "I came here to tell you, I forgive you," she said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I do." His lips trembled. "Henrietta..." "No, don't speak. I just need you to hear it." She placed her palm gently against the glass. "You no longer have power over me, or over him." He stared at her hand for a long time, then whispered, "I understand." She hung up the phone. He didn't. His hand stayed pressed against the glass long after she'd turned away. I opened the door for her, and we walked out together. Neither of us looked back. Outside, the air smelled like rain. Drops began to fall, soft and steady. She spoke first. He looked old. "Guilt ages faster than time," I said. She took a deep breath. "I thought I'd feel lighter." "You will," I said. Just not today. We drove home in silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, just heavy, with things too sacred to say. That night she stayed for dinner. We ate quietly, soup steaming between us. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt human again. Afterward, she asked, "Do you ever think about forgiving him?" "I already did," I said. She frowned. "Oh, after everything." "Forgiveness isn't a gift you give them," I said. "It's a door you close so you can leave the room." Her eyes softened. "That sounds easy when you say it." "It isn't," I said. "But it's the only way peace survives." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe someday I'll get there too." "You already are," I said. When she left, I stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The street lights glowed on the wet pavement, turning the night silver. I walked to the edge of the porch and looked up. The clouds had thinned. A small tear of moonlight slipped through. I thought about Leonard's face behind that glass, the same eyes that once carried arrogance, now hollowed by recognition. He had finally learned what silence meant. I whispered into the quiet. Some men learn through punishment, some through loss. But the wise learn through stillness. The wind shifted cool and gentle against my face. For the first time, the air felt clean again. Inside, the clock ticked softly, steady as a heartbeat. I poured the last of the coffee into a cup, sat at the table, and let the warmth fill my hands. The same table that once held a plastic plate on the floor now held peace, quiet, hard-earned, and real. I smiled at myself faintly but fully and thought, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without pain. And with that, I knew the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about return. The morning after she visited him, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet. That kind of quiet. That isn't emptiness, but relief. The air was cool, still scented faintly with last night's rain. When I opened the curtains, the world outside was washed clean. For the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check messages, didn't think about court dates, didn't replay arguments in my head. I just stood there, listening to the steady hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. It was strange how peace could feel both foreign and familiar, like remembering a song you used to love but haven't heard in decades. I made coffee the same way I always did, 2 spoons of sugar, no milk. But when I took the first sip, something was different. It wasn't the taste, it was the absence of bitterness. The world hadn't changed. Only I had. Henrietta came by around 9. She didn't knock. She just stepped inside, barefoot hair, still damp from her shower. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning." She smiled. Not the polite, strained smile I had grown used to, but something gentler, freer. "You were right," she said. "I slept better." "Peace does that," I said. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. There was no need. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was just there, comfortable, shared. After a while, she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo. It was the three of us, me, Sarah, and Henrietta, taken 20 years ago by the lake house I built. Henrietta couldn't have been more than 15, her arms around her mother's waist. We were all smiling the kind of smile that belongs to people who still believe in forever. "I found this in a drawer last night," she said. "I almost forgot it existed." I studied the photo. The edges had faded, the corners curled, but the warmth in it was untouched. "I remember that day," I said. "You tried to catch fish with your hands. Sarah said you'd scare them away with all your laughing." Henrietta smiled through a tear. "I think we did. Maybe that's what happiness is," I said. "Scaring away everything else." She looked down at the photo again. "I want to start over," she whispered. "Work lives small. Earn things the right way this time. I don't want anything handed to me again." "You don't have to start over," I said. "You just have to start." She nodded slowly. "Would it be okay if I came by every Sunday, cook for you sometimes?" "Always," I said. After she left, I went out to the yard. The sun had broken through the clouds, golden light spilling over the grass, the air still glistening with dew. I stood by the porch railing and took a long breath. The world smelled new. Across the street, a neighbor's child was riding a bicycle, for the first time wobbling, falling, getting back up. His mother clapped, patient and proud. And somehow, that simple sight felt like a sermon. We all fall. The difference is who we choose to become after. I walked out to the garage and opened the old drawer where I used to keep my construction plans. Blueprints yellowed with age, pencil marks fading. I found one labeled Evans & Sons, Lakeview Project. Sarah's handwriting in the corner. "Build something that lasts." I smiled, tracing the letters with my finger. Maybe it was time to build again, not houses, but meaning. That afternoon I started writing. Not for anyone else, not for court, not for closure, just for me. The words came slow at first, then steady. There was a man who mistook silence for weakness. He learned too late that silence is the sound truth makes before it speaks. I wrote about the plastic plate, the humiliation, the lawsuit, the forgiveness that came out. I didn't try to make it poetic. I just wrote what was true. And the more I wrote, the lighter the room felt. By evening, my hands ached, but I didn't stop. When I finally put the pen down, the last line read, "Peace isn't something you find. It's something you build one decision at a time." I closed the notebook and placed it on the table. Then I sat back, exhaling slowly, watching the last light fade through the window. That night I dreamed of Sarah. Not the way she looked at the end, pale, fragile, but the way she was before, laughing by the lake, sunlight tangled in her hair. She didn't speak in the dream. She just smiled, nodded once, and turned toward the water. When I woke, I understood what she meant. Life wasn't about what I'd lost. It was about what I'd learned to keep. I stepped outside again, barefoot, the porch wood cool under my feet. The world was quiet, except for the sound of distant birds. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man remembering his pain. I felt like a man living beyond it. I whispered to the dawn, "Some peace comes after war, but the deepest kind comes after forgiveness." And as the sun rose soft and golden over the horizon, I realized this was it. The real ending. Not revenge, not regret, just return. Weeks passed. The air grew warmer, softer. The frost melted from the porch railings, and the yard filled again with small signs of life, grass pushing through dirt, sparrows returning to the fence. Peace had settled in, not as a guest, but as a quiet resident. Most mornings I wrote, sometimes a page, sometimes a sentence. It wasn't about finishing anything. It was about leaving something honest behind a map of the road I'd walked with all its wrong turns and small salvations. Henrietta visited every Sunday. She brought groceries, laughed more easily, talked about work at the bookstore she'd joined. Once she showed me a novel she was reading about forgiveness and said, "It's strange. The older I get, the more I realize stories aren't about heroes. They're about survivors." I smiled. Heroes end stories. Survivors live them. At night, I'd sit by the window with the notebook open on my lap. I'd reread what I'd written, not to correct it, but to remember. The pages carried the weight of everything that had happened: betrayal, silence, truth, and the small grace that came after. I titled it "The Quiet Legacy," because that's all any of us really leave behind. Not possessions, not revenge, but the tone of how we lived. One evening, Henrietta found the notebook on the table. She turned the pages carefully, her eyes moving slowly across the words. When she looked up, her voice was soft. "Is this your story?" "It's ours," I said, "but tell it your way when I'm gone." She smiled through a tear. "You really forgive him, don't you?" "I don't carry him anymore," I said. "That's close enough." Outside, the sun was setting a muted gold, sinking behind the trees. The light filled the room, warm and forgiving. I closed my eyes for a moment and listened the distant hum of the world, the slow ticking clock, her quiet breathing beside me. Everything felt balanced, complete. For years I thought justice was the final chapter. But now I knew justice is just the pause before wisdom begins. I looked at her and said, "Henrietta, when people ask about me, don't tell them what happened. Tell them what I learned." She nodded, whispering, "What did you learn, Dad?" I smiled faintly. That peace isn't given. It's earned. Every day you choose silence over anger. The room fell still. The last light touched the pages of my notebook, gold against ink memory, against time. And as the sun disappeared, I whispered one last truth meant only for the air to keep. In the end, forgiveness is the only thing worth inheriting.